Welcome to the Abundance Hack Show, where we are inspiring you to ditch the outdated beliefs, release the blocks, and fully embrace your sovereignty so you can confidently expand to allow more love, joy, and aligned success in your life. I am Niajae, your conscious accountability partner, reminding you that abundance is your birthright. Hey M&Ms, thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. What are you manifesting in your life today? If you're joining me for the first time, although M&Ms are really yummy candies, it actually stands for magical manifestors. And if you're listening to this podcast, you want to manifest a life of abundance, but we have to do so without being in tons of debt. So today's guest is Brad Nelson, and he is the host of Debt Free Dad podcast. And we're going to dive into his story. But before we do, Brad, I want to ask you, what does abundance mean to you?
Oh man, I think for me, it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with having 100% control over my time and how I spend it and who I get to spend it with. Everything after that is just a bonus.
I love it. I love it. There was a really powerful quote that I heard from Robert Kiyosaki that really changed my life. Because I used to say, I'm from New York, and I used to hear the quote all the time, time is money, time is money. Robert Kiyosaki said, time is not money. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So time is everything.
You got it. Yeah. And if you look at statistics, like if you look at people who are older, even people who are getting to elderly age, and you ask them what kinds of regrets that they have, very few of them will actually talk about money and stuff and titles. And what they'll talk about is relationships. What they'll talk about is, I wish I didn't work so hard for money all the time. Like, I wish I would have just enjoyed and actually chosen to be happy. So if you look at some of the lessons that they're already trying to teach us, that's what I try to focus on, is like, these are the people who have already lived their life, and this is what they're saying. I'm going to try to model more of that kind of lifestyle now. And I don't think I'll have any regrets once I get to that age.
Yes, great advice and a great realization. So tell us about you. Who is Brad Nelson?
Yeah. So a funny story, I never really planned on ever talking about finances or helping people with their finances. But we struggled very early on in our lives with money and personal finance, just like a lot of people do today. I mean, right now, statistically, almost 8 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck. And even some of those people who are making over 6 figures, it's not necessarily an income issue for most people. It's a spending issue. And we were one of those. And, we fell into the common mistake of, well, if we just make more money, that'll fix our problems. Well, it ended up actually just causing more problems because we never really fixed the habits. So the more money we made, the more money we spent, the more debt we had, the nicer cars we got, the bigger houses we got, the nicer vacations we went on that we put on credit cards. And it just seemed like we were just on this never-ending hamster wheel that we really just couldn't get off of. And I can remember very early on feeling financial stress as an early adult, buying my first house and doing what you were supposed to do with money and following all the common rules of, the credit score is the most important thing. And I just never felt really satisfied with that life. I was dealing with a lot of stress. I had a good job. It wasn't the job's fault. It was really me that wasn't fitting in the job anymore. And I was not happy with my job. I wasn't engaged in it any longer, but I had built this lifestyle around this salary and I couldn't leave. Like, I had to make those bills, and I was having a hard time getting exiting that career and trying to find something else with all this debt. And unfortunately, my first marriage ended in divorce. And a lot of that had to do with money and personal finance. And in fact, money and personal finance is one of the leading causes of divorce in the United States right now. Money fights, money arguments. And I lived that life. And there were a lot of other reasons why that marriage ended, but money played a role. And I lost my house to foreclosure during that divorce. And it was at that time where it was like, okay, like I'm at like a moment here. Like I can be, completely just upset about what's going on, or I can look at this as like, I'm going to use this opportunity to change my life. And so I said, the first thing I got to start working on is my finances. I got to get these things figured out because, it's not working. So I set out on what I call was a personal finance crusade. And I decided just to start learning and put my ego down and not just constantly be like, it's what I think, it's what I feel. And I wanted to start learning from people who were successful. So, and I didn't care who they were. I didn't care what they were teaching. I just wanted to learn. And so what I started doing was picking and choosing some of the things that those people were teaching and starting to implement them in my life, things that worked. And crazy enough, it worked, right? My finances improved. my mindset improved, and eventually I paid off all my debt and became completely debt free. I met my current wife, and she was dealing with a lot of the same things that I was dealing with. And she too was just tired of debt. She ended up paying off $33,000 in 11 months, becoming completely debt free. And we've now been completely debt free for over 7 years. And the funny thing along the way is that we didn't really expect this, but people started really asking us for help, and they started seeing and hearing what we were doing. And they're like, you guys, we're struggling with a lot of the same things that you're struggling with, or that you guys are talking about. Again, money's a very taboo topic. A lot of people don't talk about it. We're really quick to get on Facebook and celebrate that new car purchase or that new home, but behind closed doors, almost 8 out of 10 people are struggling. That's something we aren't sharing. And by us coming out and sharing our struggle, I think it opened the doors to other people being like, okay, I'm not the only one who's dealing with this. And so we just started helping people on the side. We weren't really doing it for money or for a career at this point. It was just to say, hey, these are the things that helped us. Try this. And I really started to fall in love with how it was transforming people's lives and how it was helping them improve their relationships with their spouses and becoming a better parent and having just less financial stress. And so I decided to say, you know what? I want to do this more. I think this is awesome. And being that I was out of debt, I had the opportunity to say, we can live on one income. We can make different choices now. We can do different things. And so I opened up my business, Debt Free Dad, and we opened up our membership site, Roots of Personal Finance, a little over 4 years ago. And since then, we've helped people save and pay off tens of millions of dollars by just walking them through a lot of the same basic personal finance principles that we followed and have been following for the last 10 years that have dramatically changed our entire lives. And I think I want to be very clear about to anyone that's listening to this is that we're just a normal, typical family. We're not making some huge, outlandish salary. Not that I'm against any of that. That's great if you want to, but we're not doing that. We're doing this on pretty typical incomes. We have a large emergency fund. We own everything in our lives, and we're getting ready to buy our next house right now. And we got 2 kids. I got a 2.5-year-old and an 11-year-old running around in my house, So, I mean, we're just a normal family, and we're just helping people through a lot of the same types of struggles that we were dealing with. And a lot of them are really starting to win. And it's amazing. It's been so much fun.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's really, really powerful. And why I wanted to have you on this podcast is because we live in a society that says make more money. And people are trying to keep up with the Joneses. And so they're putting things on credit. They're buying things that they can't really afford. And I fall into this. Like I have fell victim to this. And you buy the programs or hire the coach that says, oh, make 6 or 7 figures. And so you're thinking like, okay, I just need that big break or that one transformational program that's going to make me all this money and I'll be able to pay off all the debt that I'm incurring. But then it doesn't happen, and then you stay on that hamster wheel. And I used to think that like 9 to 5 was like a rat race, but then we have an entrepreneur hamster wheel that people are not talking about because it is taboo. And we're just waiting for that big break in our business and that big break in our business and that big break in our business. And then when it doesn't come, then you're sitting in a pile of debt and you're like, damn, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And these are the things that people are not talking about, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. So if someone is like, I feel your pain right now, where does someone start if they're trying to get out of debt and be completely debt free?
Yeah, I think the first place to start, and it's a place that most people don't start in, and I think this is why a lot of people fail in actually getting out of debt, is to really determine what's important to you and what do you really want in life. Have the courage to not care what anybody thinks about that. Those are the keys, I think. You really have got to think about some of those things first and foremost. But ultimately, what people decide to do is I'm just going to go pay off debt. And they never really do the homework beforehand to really determine, okay, why are we going to put this work in? Because getting out of debt is hard. It is hard work. It's been probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life. It took me about 4 to 5 years to get completely out of debt. So the first things I would focus on is just, what's your why? What do you want? What does your life look like? And then what are going to be the things that you're going to need in your life in order to make those things happen? There's a lot of people who struggle with a lot of overspending and wasteful spending habits. And I think a big reason for that is a lack of really good, clear, defined financial goals. And when you have some really good short-term and long-term goals, it's really easy to say no to a lot of stuff that isn't going to help you to get to those goals. And it's easier to say yes to the things that are going to push you towards those goals. So making sure that you've got some clearly defined goals is really critical. Another step to all of this too is really analyzing your behavior and your habits. Like if you're listening to this show, I'm going to for not everybody, but for a lot of people listening to this show, I can save you hundreds of dollars just by doing this one thing. So what I would recommend is get out your bank statements and your credit card statements and go through with your highlighters or whatever you want to mark up those pages with and start categorizing where you've been spending your money. And for the overall majority of people who go through and do this, they are absolutely blown away by how much money they actually have that's not going to things that are helping them realize their dreams. And this is where you start to realize habits and behaviors in money and what needs to start changing. So those are the first steps. Like if you can start working on those things first and foremost, getting out of debt becomes easier because you've now gotten rid of a lot of wasteful spending. You've freed up cash every month to start saying, okay, how can we start paying down some of the debt that we already have?
I love it. I love it. The pandemic gave me an opportunity to do that in my life. I'm sure like a lot of people went through like during COVID and looked at their finances. So, why do you think people have a hard time focusing on this?
Because it's scary. I think, society has taught us in a way with marketing and advertising that stuff equals success. And I mean, we're an overindulgent society. I mean, period. I mean, you look at the food and the diet industry and, just eating habits. And a lot of those relate really well to personal finances too. We're very overindulgent. We celebrate that. In fact, if you look at your Facebook news feed, I mean, how many people do you see celebrating that they fully funded their retirement? Very few, if any at all. But how many people do you see celebrating overindulgence? A lot, right?
Mm.
So that's a perfect example. And I think that's why that this is a hard topic. I think most people know what they should be doing. It's hard to actually do it though. I mean, the personal finance principles out there are very basic, have a budget, live below your means, right? But when we live in a world that's teaching us to, you only live once, treat yourself, right? And you constantly are hearing those messages over and over again from marketing and advertising, and you're even seeing those in your own social circle. It's very hard to break away from the herd and actually live that way. And that's why I think a lot of people do struggle with it. And I mean, social media is a perfect example. And it's like almost like it's you can just see it on social media. Like you see people like I've seen quotes where people say, all my friends are buying houses right now and I'm going to buy a house now too. Right. Well, does that financially make sense to you to do that? Or, same thing with vehicles. Like I'll see one friend buy a vehicle and then the other one goes out and buys a vehicle too. Right. And it's like, we're seeing all of these examples. So I think that's what makes it hard, is because we just live in a society that has taught us not to manage our money.
Yeah. I totally agree, and we see those messages all the time, and I've said them like, buy the shoes, take the
Right.
vacation. So yeah, and it's so much of it. I feel like it's a lot of media, and I think that we have so much ego, like so much of our identity is wrapped up in that. So when you and your wife decided we're going to get debt free, did you feel did you have to give up things in your life that you enjoyed?
Um, yes and no. I'll say yes at first because I thought we enjoyed them
Mm.
until we got rid of them and I realized that they just weren't all that important to us. One of the biggest things that I got rid of was a brand new car. It was a $500 a month payment. And I'll admit, it was tough. It was a brand new car and I traded that car in, got rid of it, sold it. And I got myself like it was a 1996 Toyota Corolla. All right. So this was not fun. All right. I dreaded it. I hated it. But you know what I loved about it was I just freed up $500 of financial stress every month. And that $500 made a huge difference in helping us get out of debt. And although that decision at the time was hard and I was scared that I was making the wrong decision, and I loved that car and I knew people were going to be like, you're crazy, that's a dumb idea. I look back and say that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my journey getting out of debt. So yeah, there were definitely some things that I had to give up, but I would say I can't even think of one thing that I had to give up that I look back on and say I wish I wouldn't have. Because financial freedom, the freedom of having opportunities, the freedom of being able to make choices, the freedom of being able to spend the time the way I want to spend my time, the freedom of being able to choose, hey, I don't want to make money today. I'm just going to hang out with my kids. You know, you there's not one thing in the world anymore not one material possession that I would want to trade to be able to take some of those opportunities and those choices away from me.
What do you do for energetic self care? Life challenges us. However, we have tools to help us navigate the transitions, release trapped emotions, maintain positive energy, and expand to allow more joy and excitement. Abundant and Aligned Society is an energetic self care accountability program that helps you go from stress and anxiety, fight or flight, to operating from a place of abundance and alignment. Go to niajae.com/society for more information and start vibrating higher.
So yeah, there were definitely some things that we had to give up, but they were all worth it. Every single one of them.
Mm. So I know you mentioned a safety net or like having that emergency fund. What are and I think is really important. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure I implemented in my life is having 3 to 6 months worth of like overhead saved away. Just you never know. So what are some tips in creating an emergency fund if someone's starting from the very beginning and they don't have any cash reserves?
Yeah, I would say what we practice is just starting out with something small. It's really hard to build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund when you have a lot of payments and debt. So what we suggest is, hey, let's start out with at least just a small emergency fund, and we're talking, $1,000 to $3,000, depending on your situation. And all of this small emergency fund is able to do is just to stop you from going further into debt for future emergencies while you work your way out of debt. And then once you're out of debt, now you use all of that extra income that was going to payments to help you build that large emergency fund. But if you have, say, once you go through your budget, and let's say you only have maybe $100, $200 a month, it's going to take you a long time to build the 3 to 6 month emergency fund on just that, plus be able to get out of debt. See, a lot of people are trying to do everything all at once, and it's slowing everything down. So if they focus on just the small emergency fund, then work on getting out of debt, then you can look at, okay, now let's build this sizable emergency fund. And, if you've got monthly payments, total them all up. How much is your car payment? How much is your credit cards? How much are student loans? Like anything that you have debt on. And now say, okay, what if we could pay ourselves this month, every single month, instead of having to go to debt? And you can see now how quickly it is to build up savings when you get to keep a lot of the income that you're making instead of sending it to everybody else. So that would be my recommendation. And as far as entrepreneurs, because I'm an entrepreneur, I do this full time. I run a complete 100% online business. This is even more critical because when you run your own business, there are ebbs and flows. There's peaks and valleys, right? There's going to be months where business is fantastic and you're on top of the world, right? Like you're excited. And then there's months where it's like, yikes, right? And having a large emergency fund and having some extra funds put away for those valley months is critical to your overall financial stress levels. I mean, it's going to take so much fear out of your business. And it makes life a lot easier to live when you're an entrepreneur, for sure.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you broke it down into because I do feel like sometimes I set like really big goals and it becomes intimidating. So just starting with a small emergency fund and then working your way. So I think that's really great advice. Have you read the book Profit First?
I have read it. Yep. It's been a while, but I have read it. Yep.
So I'm actually reading that book right now. And I think that something else that entrepreneurs get in a habit of is like not actually paying themselves. And he says in the book to take your profit first and then use the remainder for expenses. And if there's not enough to cover expenses, then lower your expenses. And that was advice that I was like, psh, because what society teaches us is raise your prices, get more clients, work harder, hustle, grind, like go, 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 rather than learn to manage what you have coming in. So, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's exactly how I run my business. And we determine everything based off of the income that we want to make. And then it's all about patience. You know, when you run your own business, I think, you know, we do live in this society where if it's not happening fast enough, you're failing, right? And that's just not true. You know, business just takes time. And I think that's one of the things that getting out of debt has taught me, is just to be patient and work the process, and the process works. It's just not going to happen as fast as you want it to, and that's okay. And I think I've just gotten really ridiculously patient. But I think for me as a business owner, yeah, I mean, I think priority number one is determining how much money you need to make to meet your financial obligations. What do you need to pay yourself? That needs to be priority number one. And then everything after that then takes care of itself as far as the business finances. Absolutely critical. And I think this is one area where a lot of entrepreneurs do fail, is that they don't take care of the cash, and they don't take care of their finances, and understanding what their expenses are, what they need to make. And that is one of the number one ways that your business will fail, is not paying attention to that money. So that would be step number one for sure, is really sitting down. Okay, in my personal finances, what is it that I need to make every month? And on my business finances, looking at like my profit and loss statement, looking at my expenses, like what can I reasonably start to pay myself, and how can I get my expenses aligned to be able to make that happen?
Yes, I love it. I love it. And I love that we've started this conversation. And I know that talking about money and finances and debt is very taboo, but I think that we have to face these things in order to have the life that we desire. Because if we are trying to manifest and we're trying to have an abundant life, but we have all of this debt and like stress, financial stress and burden weighing over us, it's going to affect our energy and how we show up in the world, how we show up in our business, how we show up in our relationships. Because, like you said, like money is the cause of a lot of divorce. So I think that this is a conversation that definitely has to be had. And I love what you're doing. So, do you want to share a little bit about your membership? If someone's like, okay, I'm ready to put some of this in place, how can you help
Yeah,
someone out?
absolutely. So we've got a lot of different types of resources that we have, that we've started offering people just on a basic level, even before a membership. We've got lots of different things. Like for instance, we came out with this little guy, which is the Totally Awesome Debt Freedom Planner. So, you know, we basically teach people how to just get their finances organized. You mentioned financial stress. In fact, according to the American Psychological Association, money and personal finance is one of the number one things that we stress about. And I think a lot of that stress comes from just not having a clear picture of everything that's happening with our financial lives. So by looking at using a planner or getting yourself on a budget, and really understanding what's coming in, what's going on in your finances, is huge. So we offer basic resources like a budgeting course to help people with those things. We offer the planner. And then for those people who are like really like, yeah, Brad, I'm that person that was like you, that just wants something different. I'm tired of this rat race. Then we have Roots. Roots is our 1 year annual membership, and many of our members actually stay longer than a year because of the accountability and the support. But this is like the education that we all should have gotten in high school before we became adults. Let's put it that way. And we're
Mhm.
teaching people just not necessarily the mathematics behind finances, because that has very little to do with financial success. It's about mindset, behavior, habits, and then really having the support and accountability to actually follow the process through. And that's a program that we offer 4 times per year. Currently, Roots is a closed membership, meaning that we only open it up for new members 4 times a year. And then we have an open enrollment period. We do a huge workshop week, and we bring in brand new members, and then we walk them through this process. And then they stay with us for a year to actually make sure they are making that they want to make, and that they're getting that support and accountability. And they get me as their coach throughout the entire process. So this is something that we started implementing because, again, it's not that people don't know what to do. We know that we should save more. We know that we probably shouldn't go further into debt. We know that we should probably have a plan, maybe a budget for our finances. but it's the doing part that most people need the help with. And that's where Roots comes in and really kind of digs in deep to getting people those answers and getting them that help.
Yeah. And I think it's just like diet. We know we shouldn't eat a lot of junk food, but we still do.
You're right. Right.
And we want to be thin and healthy, but we still eat cake and drink beer and stuff like that. So it's just one of those things where I think it's better to start before something goes wrong. Like a lot of
100%.
people get serious about their health once they have a health scare,
Yeah.
or you get serious about your finances once you're in like a massive pile of debt. So if you can be proactive and take action now, because and you mentioned we should have been taught this in school. Like, we're not taught how to build wealth, we're not taught how to be debt free. We live in a society that's teaching you to get into more debt, put it on your credit card. There's constantly credit options that's thrown in our face. And I feel like even as entrepreneurs, we're taught to survive and we're not taught to thrive. So there's a difference in how you operate. So I really love what you're doing. And I mean, it's something that I've had to take action on and get really honest with myself, because for a while I was feeding into a lot of the programs, and they've put unrealistic expectations on them, like make 100K in 90 days and like stuff like that. Literally, it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I'm with you. I'm with you. And I think, you brought up a lot of good points, especially like that. That's great advice that you gave. And getting started when you don't feel you absolutely need it is critical. That's where we see most people, like the people that start in that position are the ones that make the progress faster because they're not in a crisis situation. But when you start from a crisis moment, yes, those can be turning moments, because it was for me too when I lost my house, but it just takes that much longer to get things moving. But if you start from a position where you're working from, I don't know if I necessarily need this, but I know I've got some work to do, those people go so much faster than most others because they're just in a much better position to start taking action. And as far as, you mentioned, building wealth, like for every question that I get, I'll get 10 questions on how to build a credit score and only one question on how to build my net worth. That's a true sign that we are going in the wrong direction as a society, and we are focused on the wrong things. And this is why most people are running into that wall over and over again, and they don't really know why. And that's because we're being fed this from all this advertising and marketing in the financial industry, that this is the most important stuff. And it's really not. It's about net worth. It's about building assets. It's about taking care of your income, not necessarily figuring out new ways and better ways of how I can go further into debt and get approved. So you brought up some valid points. I just want to talk a little bit more to those. Those were great.
Yeah, so I feel like I have to do a follow-up interview about building wealth, because that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
So
do
we
it.
will definitely have you back on the show. So my last question is, what are your top 3 tips for living an abundant life?
Number one, having control of your finances, because I think it just touches everything. And if you look at it, it plays a part in your career, it plays a part in your relationship, it plays, I mean, it's just everywhere. So having control over your finances, I think, is key. I think also determining what's important to you, and I think once you have your finances under control, you can decide what's important to you, and be able to focus on those things. Like, I started working from home and being present in my kid's life when my son was 5, and my daughter is only 2.5, and I've been with her every day. I saw her first steps. I was at every doctor's appointment. Like, I've been fully present in their lives. And that was something that was really important to me and my wife. Being able to work with my wife day in and day out, that was a dream of ours. Like, we love spending time together. Now, that's not great for every spouse. I get our spouses, right? But for us, that's just something we wanted. So I think sitting down and really deciding what's important to you. And then lastly is just, it's scary, but man, just have fun going after your dreams. I think if you can get your finances in order, and yeah, face the fear of going after your dreams, that to me is all abundance. Like, it is like this, running this business, being able to be on a podcast like this with you and being able to talk about this topic. And after this, I get to choose whatever I want to do with the rest of my day. Like, it's all because we said yes to the dreams that were scary, but not all of them were realized yet, but we're working our way there. And it's just been an amazing adventure. You get one shot at life, And I think it's just a shame that we waste it and we get stuck. And I think moving towards those dreams is an amazing way to do it.
Yes, I absolutely love it. So, where can people find you online if they want to find out more information about the calendar and your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, therealdebtfreedad.com. There's a lot of different ways that you can start conversations with us. We also have the Debt Free Dad podcast, weekly episodes on just money and personal finance, going deeper into a lot of the topics and things that we talked about here today. We have a free Facebook group out there called Life Without Payments, where thousands of people are working through this, and they're getting started, and they're starting to understand that, maybe I do need help, and maybe I need to be in a community that's also seeking help, because my social circle isn't really excited about getting out of debt, and I need to kind of connect with people who want to better their lives. So those would probably be some of the starting resources that I would recommend. If there's more information that you want, those would be the places I would start looking into.
Awesome. Well, I will have all of his links in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. And I think it's a conversation that needed to be started. And I just sending so much gratitude for the service that you're doing, because it is very much needed when society is telling us the opposite.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, M&Ms, until next time, be decadent. Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.